I think Gutenberg brings a lot of interesting ideas to the table. It's definitely something new and fresh within WordPress, but when you hit the scale of WordPress, I would be very cautious about making any major changes to the experience that people, especially who don't think of WordPress as, oh, this is WordPress, but this is a tool that I'm using. When you start introducing those changes, there's a cognitive cost of learning something new. So go forth, do some cool stuff, but at the same time be willing to walk people through what it takes to adapt, both from a user end and a development end.
Given what it is intended to do, I think that they're on the right track. I know there's been a lot of back and forth about what it should or shouldn't do, and I think a lot of that has to do with the expectations that were set when the project was first announced. It was kind of described in maybe more of a vague, open-ended sort of initiative that we should replace the current WordPress editor for something that is more of a block experience to improve WordPress's overall editing experience, which I think some people may have interpreted as a page builder. And so when the first few releases came out, it seems like there's been some backlash because people are not really seeing Gutenberg behave a lot like the page builders that maybe they're used to using. Where, from my perspective, what I've always seen it as is an improvement over TinyMCE, which has been adequate for a good period of time, but certainly is not the experience that we aspire to. And in that case, I think it is making really good progress. It is making the content creation experience better than using TinyMCE, knowing that it's not intended, at least from what I've seen, to be a full-fledged page editor. I do think, like a lot of people, there are some big open questions that haven't been addressed, specifically around meta boxes and custom fields and how that's managed. So I do have some concerns about how is that going to be handled.
I haven't tried it. I'm pretty busy starting a new business, and so it seems like every time I go to look at it, it's dramatically different. And I think, well, I can look at it now, but if I look at it again next week, it's going to be completely different. And so I'm holding off trying it. I know it's easy to try, but I'm holding off trying it because it's growing, it's changing. I'm waiting for it to be a little bit more consistent.
What have you heard about it? Do you have any concerns or any hopes for what Gutenberg will offer WordPress?
Yeah, I've heard it's very different. I've seen some screencasts of it, so I know what it looks like. I'm a little concerned about how dramatically it's going to change things for people who build websites with WordPress. Not so much for people who use WordPress. I mean, they can adjust their flow and learn new tools, but how much am I going to have to change what my company does as a business to build websites with this new tool? I don't know the answer to that, and so it's something I think about.
Mike, tell us about your first impressions of Gutenberg.
So, I had played around a while back with Lasso, which was the ASOP story engine front end, and I liked the way that it did kind of a block-based layout like that as well. So when Gutenberg came along, I started playing with that, and it did remind me a little bit of that. I do like just the ability to move around. Now, the way I write posts though is very rarely will I actually write them in the editor. I'll use Google Drive, run them through some editing tools, and then paste them into the editor. So I don't do a lot of actual writing within the editor itself.
Okay, cool. So have you tested Gutenberg? Have you tested pasting into it and things like that?
I've played around with Gutenberg on a project, did where I am pasting some things in with mixed results. I tend to just put it as one block. That was with a very early version of Gutenberg. I haven't tried that again with the other one, but I have written some and tried the different blocks and played around with some, putting different images and moving things around a lot.
Okay, cool. What's the number one thing you might change about it based on your testing?
Being able to paste things in and having it make the blocks is the big one, but my main concern is, like what a lot of people are voicing, is the meta boxes. working on Rainmaker platform, we have a lot of things that are on the post, and it's like how do we get those meta boxes to work within Gutenberg? And I know that's right now kind of the big thing that's being worked out. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. That's my main concern from kind of a developer side of it, is how do I get my things that work with post content to actually work with post content in Gutenberg.
So have you experimented a little bit with extending it? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, when it first came up, I found a good post, and I can't remember who wrote it, but it was kind of how to create a custom block for Gutenberg. So I did play around with that, and I just had a shortcode. We just enter a shortcode onto the editor, and then there was that starter kit that came out, and put that in and played around with that just to kind of see the plumbing of how that would work. But I haven't gotten into actually on any production sites or any projects actually creating a custom block for it. That's another one that I'm really curious to see how that all plays out.
So where do you think the project is at right now? And what are your thoughts about what it could bring to WordPress in the future?
I think overall it's pretty positive. I do like the direction it's going. I think there's a lot of roadblocks, similar to with the API, where it's mostly there, but now that you start getting into that last little, 20% of it of what's gonna go in, what's not gonna go in, what's gonna have to wait. I think I do like a lot of the conversation around it. I think there's been a lot of good talk about some of the major concerns and how they're being addressed, and I do think they're being addressed. I think it'll be a while before it's ready for everybody and where it needs to be.
Sarah, have you tried Gutenberg yet?
I have not. I have been following the news of Gutenberg a little bit, but I'm really very client-facing with my business, and I know it's not quite ready for production yet, so it's not something that I've really dived into yet. I'm excited about it though, because I have a lot of clients who say they can't stand WordPress because when they look on the back end and update their pages and posts, it doesn't look how it looks on the front end. So I really think that WordPress to compete in the future needs this move, and I'm excited about where it's going. So I think it's a good thing.
I have tried out Gutenberg. I spun up just a little local WordPress site just to kind of play around with it. Nowhere for production yet, obviously. So far, it seems like we're taking WordPress, which has been an important part of my life, and we're making it more like blogs like Medium, for example, is probably the most frequent comparison. And I think that Gutenberg will help solve some problems, but I'm worried that it's going to kind of create new problems. I can see for people who are just using WordPress as a blog, and in many ways Gutenberg represents sort of a step back, those blogging roots. I think it could be wonderful. But for people like myself, I'm building more complex sites. I have some concerns about kind of what you're doing with Gutenberg is you're sort of just jamming everything into this content editor block. And I'm worried about how that's going to work later on down the line when I need to get more information out of my posts, maybe some more meta information. So I have some concerns there. But for a typical just writing a blog user, I think it could be a really useful tool.
Okay, cool. So what do you like about it, and what do you wish you could change about it?
I so far haven't been able to really wrap my head around developing for it. And so for me as a developer, I'm kind of concerned about how they're going to be documenting it. It's kind of similar to like the REST API right now. It still feels like I'm in the Wild West there, where there's a lot I need to learn and not necessarily the best documentation for it. And so when I look at Gutenberg, where I can add in all these content blocks and things like that, I would like to have the ability to develop in a way where I know that the end user will be following sort of the patterns I've established throughout the site, and I'm not sure that that's going to quite happen yet. Maybe as the documentation gets better, I'll be able to build in some more restrictions and structure the data in a more formal way, but for right now, it's very like just dump whatever you want in there, go for it. And there's lots of good there, and there's also some potential badness.
So I have tried it, and I've contributed to its development a little bit. I think that my first thoughts are that it is an ambitious project. It is replacing kind of the most critical part of the way that people publish content to the web using WordPress. And so I consider it to be a very ambitious project, and with big ambitious projects comes lots of work, lots of discussion, lots of meetings, lots of scaffolding that has to get built to make stuff work, and lots of decisions that need to be made, and lots of revisiting of old solved problems, and so it is probably one of the most important projects that anyone has kind of worked on with WordPress, I think, in a number of years, in my opinion. And so my take on it is that everyone sort of has a responsibility to try and influence the direction that it's going to take. It's if we care about the open web and the freedom of how people publish to it, then we should all try and join in and help with its ongoing development and make it as good as it can if it's going to end up part of WordPress, in the coming months. So.
Okay, so what are your thoughts about using it to create content? What do you like, and what are your concerns?
So it's for me as a publisher, and I blog occasionally, like relatively long form, and so for me it's just writing, and I don't know that Gutenberg alone solves that problem for me, as like for my style of writing, and because I will usually write technical type articles or things about like what I've learned from writing code, or about pieces or APIs in WordPress, or approaches towards other things, then because my posts are not usually, they're either media light, there's no media really in them at all, or they're only a picture of something that that Gutenberg off the shelf does not instantly solve a lot of problems for me. But then you can ask yourself, like, do I use WordPress this way because this is the way WordPress works? Or do I use it this way because this is my preference? I guess I'm not really sure anymore. Like after 14 years of using WordPress, do I just write content and not use images because actually placing them or using them in content blocks is not easy? Or do I do it because I prefer to either have one way or the other? I guess I don't really know. But the interesting thing that Gutenberg and a block-based editor in WordPress brings to the table is what future blocks may actually end up doing and looking like and being. I don't think the first version of blocks, as powerful as they are and as neat as it will be to have them packaged with WordPress proper, what plugins we'll be able to do with blocks will kind of seal the deal the way that plugins and themes did. So out of the box, it looks like Gutenberg comes with a bunch of really cool blocks already, more above and beyond just paragraphs and lists and whatever else. But so images and poetry, and once Jetpack brings in like beautiful math or whatever else, if these are equation blocks that come in, there's neat stuff that we can start to do with that. Or if shortcodes can do more complex rendering and have interactive blocks that do stuff, or if we end up using bbPress and put blocks into posts where you can pull in a topic or a comment thread or whatever else into a block, might be kind of neat. But these are like the advanced things that you could do with a block that we've kind of shoehorned into widgets or shortcodes for a really long time, is where the future of Gutenberg is going to be. And whether or not that particular posting interface caters itself better to a blog post, or if it actually is for custom post types and pages or these other things, is going to kind of be for everyone together to decide how deeply it gets integrated, or how much we really double down on it. And like the REST API being in WordPress core, if there are people that are doubling down on it, they're not the same people that are good traveling the world and giving huge presentations about the really, really neat stuff that they're building with it. If that's happening, I don't see a lot of people really talking about it. So it's important that for the popularity of Gutenberg, or the adoption of Gutenberg, and for people to have confidence in it, that people use it and people talk about what they're using with it and talk about what they're building with it and why. And so I think, not that they're the same, but Gutenberg seems to have a lot more momentum behind it and confidence around it than what the REST API had, and I think that bodes well for the merge into core that seems pretty likely to happen. But if blocks don't happen, or if people can't do really good things with blocks in Gutenberg, and it just ends up being what it is, and if it's too difficult to integrate with or extend stuff off of, I guess we'll see.